So I'm going to do a really bad quality performance. Okay, so here's the plot of Macbeth. So some of the scenes I didn't draw, and there's really bad animation. So whatever. Macbeth. 3 witches are standing around, and they're doing prophecies, but that is not important. So anyway, that. Let's see. Okay, so yeah. King Duncan is talking to a wounded soldier who's like, hey, guess what? Macbeth unseamed MacDonald from the nave to the chops, which means he cut him open from the belly button to the jaw. And Macbeth is like this cool general who's like always killing people. And then King Duncan's like, what happened? And the soldier's like, yeah, that means we won the war. And Duncan's like, awesome, I love Macbeth and stuff. So anyway, Macbeth and his friend Banquo. Macbeth's the one with the black on his face. Banquo is the one with a little curly thing on his head. So they go to meet up with some witches. And the witches are like, we have some prophecies for you. Number 1, you're going to be King Macbeth. And Macbeth's like, awesome. They're like, also, Macbeth, you're going to be the Thane of Cawdor. And he's like, awesome. And they're like, Banquo, you're not going to be a king. And he's like, oh, man. But they're like, your sons are going to be kings. And he's like, yes. So they're all happy about that. And they're like, we love these witches. And I hope that those prophecies are true. So, anyway. Let's see. Macbeth goes to see his wife after the present Thane of Cawdor gets executed to make way for Macbeth. And he said, guess what? I became the Thane of Cawdor. And she's like, well, good thing to hear this story. And Lady Macbeth's the one on the right. And she says, okay, so if you want to become king, you gotta kill King Duncan. And Macbeth's like, but I don't wanna. And she's like, if you're a real man, you're gonna go kill Duncan. And he's like, how are we ever gonna do that? And then Duncan's like, hey, guess what? I'm gonna stay at your castle. And then Macbeth's like, awesome, let's kill him. And then Macbeth's like, yeah, let's kill him also. And then they're all at the castle, and Duncan is with his son Malcolm. And Macbeth is talking to his wife again, and they're making a plan that Lady Macbeth's gonna make the guards drunk. Then Macbeth's gonna go in there, kill Duncan, and then leave the bloody daggers with the guards to make it look like they killed Duncan. So then there's a scene that I didn't draw where Macbeth sees a dagger floating in midair, and he's like, hey, I found a dagger floating in midair. And then, anyway, so Macbeth goes and he murders Duncan, and he's like, I hate this. And then he's like murdering Duncan and stuff. And then he's like, a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. And then he comes back. And he's like, hey, guess what? I saw Duncan. And then I killed Duncan. And then Lady Macbeth's like, now we both got blood in our hands. So, I hear knocking at the front door. We have to go wash our hands. Anyway. So, and then these two people called the Thane of Lennox and the Thane of Fife, who are, and the Thane of Fife is named Macduff. Macduff's the second to the left, and the Thane of Lennox is all the way to the left. The guy second to the right is the porter, who's at the front gate. And he's like, so they're like knocking, and the porter's like, who's there? And then he makes a bunch of like jokes and stuff, and then he like faints and stuff. And then Macduff and the Thane of Lennox come in, and they're talking to the porter, and the porter's being really awkward. And then Macbeth comes in, and he's like, hey guys. And then Macduff's like, hey, guess what? I just needed to like go check on the king. And then Macbeth's like, oh, okay. But then he's like, oh, wait, he's dead. And then Macduff goes out of the room. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm making a play of Macbeth, and I'm Macduff. And then Macduff goes out to go check on the king. And then they hear, oh, horror, horror. And that because Macduff finds King Duncan, who's dead. And then he's like, everyone go see, there's a dead guy. And then everyone's like freaking out because the king's dead. And then Malcolm comes, he's like, what's going on? And then Macduff's like, hey, guess what? Your father's dead. And then Banquo's there, and then everyone's talking. And then the Thane of Lennox is like, hey, guess what? His guards killed Duncan, and then Macbeth killed them. And they're like, what? You killed the guards? And he's like, yeah, I was angry. And then Lady Macbeth faints, but not real faint, just to let them know that she's very sympathetic, but I'm doing air quotes in midair, but you can't see, because my camera's not on. So then there's Donalbain, who's Malcolm's brother, the younger son, and he's there, but he doesn't do anything. And then Malcolm and Donalbain run away. They just run away. And then there's the Thane of Ross that comes in, he just says everything, but he's not important. So, Macduff says he's going home to Fife. And then Banquo is being like, hey, he's like, Macbeth's got it all. Only my children will be king. And then Macbeth's like, hey, are you gonna come to my coronation? Because I'm king. Hey, come to the feast after dinner. And then Banquo's like, no, I can't. I'm going riding with my son for a bit. And then Macbeth's like, oh, that's a shame. Is Fleance, who's your son? Who's Banquo's son? Riding with you by any chance? And he's like, yep. And then Macbeth's like, splendid, splendid. He's like, okay, you guys riding. Don't get in an accident. I hope you show up by. And then they hire some murderers. And then he's like, murderers, go kill Banquo. And then they go and they kill Banquo. But then his son, Fleance, runs away. But Banquo's like, fly, good Fleance, fly! Fly! But he doesn't actually fly, he runs. But that's not the important part. So, let me see. So Macbeth's at his feast, and he's at a ceremony. And then, so anyway, he's at a ceremony. He freaks out because Banquo's ghost is there. And then everyone's like, but there's no one there. And then Macbeth's like, but there's someone there. And then he like completely ruins the dinner party. But Lady Macbeth's like, hey, he does this all the time. No need to worry. It's fine. Macbeth's like, but Banquo's ghost is there. I tell ya, he's there. And then Lady Macbeth's like, you just ruined your dinner party. And then Macbeth is like, we need to go get some more prophecies from these witches. So they go to the witches. So, and then they're talking to the witches, and the witches are like, we have more prophecies. And then he sees 3 apparitions. The first one says, hey, guess what? Macbeth, you gotta beware Macduff. Also, I'm apparition 1 in the play, so I get to just say, beware myself, pretty much. So he sees that he has to beware Macduff. And then he sees another one that says, anyone of woman born cannot harm you. And he's like, ooh, but everyone's born of woman. So that means whoever this Macduff guy is, he's not very good. And he can't kill me because everyone's born of woman born, right? And then the last one is the only time he'll ever be able to die is when Birnam Wood, which is the woods outside of his castle, Dunsinane, comes to Dunsinane. Like, it literally moves to Dunsinane. And he was like, that'll never happen. And then he sees another apparition of 8 descendants of Banquo, all crowned king. And he's like, this is not fair. We gotta kill Fleance. And so they really need to kill Fleance. Anyway, so he's like, whoever this Macduff guy is, and he did some research, and he's like, Macduff is this, like, Thane of Fife, and he ran away, so we gotta go kill his family. So he sends murderers, and they kill Macduff's family. But Macduff's son does not run away, so his wife and his children all die. and nothing good comes out of that scene. So, and then there's a really long speech about Malcolm and Macduff talking to each other. Macduff's like, hey, guess what, Malcolm? You gotta come back. This all takes place in Scotland, by the way. And he's like, hey, guess what? You gotta come back and take the throne from Macbeth because you're the heir. And Malcolm's like, no, I'll stay here. And he's like, well, bye, traitor. And he's like, haha, I was just testing you. And then Macduff's like, okay, come back. And then Malcolm's like, even if I was king, it wouldn't be very good because I am like, I am so good. I steal, I'm greedy, and I steal money, and I love women, which is not good for a king. And he's like, I'm really mean, and I love sins, and I love it, mwahaha. And then Macduff is like, oh, well, in that case, I'm leaving you. And then Malcolm's like, haha, it's just another trick. And then Macduff's like, you're weird. And then Thane of Ross shows up, but I will never draw him because he's not very good. And then Thane of Ross tells Macduff, hey, guess what? Your entire family is murdered. And Macduff's like, well, that's bad. But anyway, so it goes to the next scene. And the doctor sees Lady Macbeth, who's walking in her sleep. And she has a candle, and she's trying to rub a spot that's not there out of her hand, which is blood. And then she is talking about how Banquo and Duncan died. So the doctors are like, this is very suspicious. But then she goes crazy and kills herself. So that happens. Let's see, where am I? So, anyway, so the next part. So Duncan and Macduff make an army, and they are cutting down trees and holding twigs to make it look like Birnam Wood is coming to Dunsinane. So that's one of the prophecies that came true. And all the twigs are coming down to Dunsinane, so they're disguising themselves, and then they attack. So there's a big battle, and everyone's fighting, and they're going like, chop, chop, ding, 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 and they're fighting, and they're like, bang, 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 and they're fighting, and they're attacking each other, and there's a huge battle, and everyone dies, but not everyone, but a lot of people killed. And this one guy named Young Seward, who's a general, well, he's the son of a general, he gets killed by Macbeth because Macbeth's like, you were born of woman, so no, you can't kill me. And then Macduff comes up to Macbeth, and he's like, let me kill you. And Macbeth's like, oh yeah. So they fight, and they're like, ding, 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 ding. And then Macbeth gets stabbed, and he dies. Remember that it said that nobody that was born of woman could harm Macbeth? Well, Macduff was born from a C-section, and for some reason, in Shakespeare, being born from a C-section does not count as being born. So that's why Macbeth had to fear Macduff, and that's also why Macduff killed Macbeth. So anyway, on with the show. And then the really good part, Macduff cuts off Macbeth's head, gives it to Duncan, and then Duncan rules Scotland, and the play ends. So I'll tell you everyone who died. So MacDonald, who got unseen from the native to the chop, means he was sliced open from the belly button to the chompers, which are your mouth, by Macbeth. There's a Thane of Cawdor that was executed. There's Duncan, who was murdered by Macbeth. There's guard who were murdered by Macbeth. There's Banquo, who were murdered by murderers. There was Lady Macduff and her children, who were also killed by murderers. There's Lady Macbeth, who killed herself. There's young Seward, who was killed by Macbeth. And there's Macbeth, who was killed by Macduff. And that's everyone who died. And Macbeth. And that's how it ends. So just pretty much, that's the whole play. Thanks.